人本城市、人本交通要打造这个行人友善的环境呢，台湾当然还有很多要跟国际施法借鉴的地方哦。那我们今年的高峰论坛呢，特别聚焦在多个人权指标都居于领先地位的瑞典。那瑞典呢，在90年代就已经率先推出了刚才执行长所提到的 Vision Zero 交通零伤亡愿景的计划哦，获得相当大的成效。那后来呢，也影响到很多国家的交通政策哦。那等一下呢，我们会有2位瑞典的专家来跟大家进一步的分享。不过在那之前呢，我们要非常谢谢驻瑞典代表处从中的这个大力的协助哦。那我们首先呢，要有请驻瑞典代表处的古瑞生代表，透过预录的影片跟大家说几句话。我们掌声欢迎代表。
吴执行长、陈总监，各位参与2023年天下城市高峰论坛的贵宾，各位女士、各位先生，大家好，谢谢天下杂志的邀请，本人很荣幸能为本次论坛致开幕词。瑞典有许多著名的品牌，如 Volvo、IKEA、Ericsson， 另外也是一个值得我们多方学习的国家，如在科技、环保、医疗、教育、社会福利、公共交通等领域。瑞典的英文名字是 Sweden，SWEDEN， 意思 S 就是 smart 聪明， W 叫做 wise 睿智， E 是 efficient 有效率， D 是 democratic 民主， E 是平等的， N 是 nation 国家，所以它是一个聪明、睿智、有效率、民主及平等的国家。当然，瑞典降低交通死亡率的零死亡愿景有值得我们学习及看齐。请容本人略介绍瑞典的零死亡愿景。首先，瑞典落实零死亡愿景涉及多个中央、地方权责机关及4部门。中央权责机关包括瑞典交通管理局、劳工局、警察局及公共卫生局，另斯德哥尔摩市及哥德堡市等地方政府及4部门，例如全国道路安全促进协会、运输公司、全国交通培训师协会及汽车驾驶员协会等组织。这是一个全面提升民众福祉的工程，因此涉及的公司权责机关至为全面。其次，瑞典零死亡愿景系于1997年获瑞典国会通过，目标是消除道路交通的死亡事故，并确立3项主要基本原则。第一，维护道路交通运输系统至关重要。第二，用路人有责任及考虑、判断并遵守交通规则。第三，用路人倘因缺乏交通知识，无法承担责任或出现伤害事故，交通系统设计必须采取额外措施以防范死亡或严重伤害事故。瑞典政府于2020年2月设定2023年议程为里程碑，其目标是2030年道路交通死亡人数减少1半，重伤人数至少减少25%。以实际数字观之，这表示2030年目标是道路交通死亡人数至多133人，重伤人数至多3100人。最后是向大家介绍瑞典零死亡愿景学院，这是零死亡道路安全愿景的知识中心。该学院设立的目的是为传播零死亡愿景的知识及概念，并与全世界分享、传授瑞典零死亡愿景的资讯及经验。每年9月，零死亡愿景学院开设为期1周的付费零死亡愿景国际课程。2023年的付费课程定于9月18日在瑞典哥德堡开办。国内相关单位的先进若有兴趣，可自行报名与会。各位女士、各位先生，台湾在2000年以前创造了3保：劳保、健保、99吃到饱。从2000年到 2022年，台湾创造了另一个新三宝。第一宝是工位 （Public House）， 第二宝是半导体晶圆 （Semiconductor Foundry）， 第三宝是网络自由度 （Freedom of Internet）。台湾的英文是 TAIWAN， 它的意思是 Traveling around is wonderful and necessary。中文是四处旅行是美好且有必要。相信以上是多年来台湾吸引外国人来台并喜欢台湾的关键。如果我们能学习瑞典零死亡愿景，落实并打造安全的交通环境，逐步达到交通零死亡的目标，台湾定能完全与国际接轨，并创国家发展新猷。最后，祝福本次天下城市高峰论坛活动圆满顺利成功，谢谢大家。
掌声谢谢驻瑞典代表处古瑞生代表，谢谢。好的，那接下来呢，我们会有2位瑞典讲者跟大家分享 Vision Zero 的相关的这个政策以及细节哦。那在那之前，我们首先要有请天下杂志未来城市陈芳玉频道总监为我们引言介绍2位讲者，我们试试掌声欢迎芳玉总监。
好，大家好，非常谢谢大家今天来参加我们的论坛。那我非常感谢驻瑞典代表处，他们真的帮我们非常大的忙，因为现在暑假整个欧洲都在，大家都不上班了哈，不像台湾人，所以我们真的花了非常多的时间，然后请瑞代表处帮我们联系，所以才邀请到了2位学者。那因为他们还在放假，还有时差的关系，所以我们请他们是又透过录影的方式来跟我们做分享瑞典的经验。那大家听了可能会有点好奇哦，这个Vision Zero 听起来是一个非常困难的政策，即便是在20多年前，其实当时的瑞典也觉得他们根本做不到，而且当时其实也有很多官员并不支持这个政策。那我们今天在场其实有非常多交通专家或是地方的政策的执行者哦，大家可能会好奇说，在这么困难的一个状态下，到底是谁有这个决心，那他是如何克服了这个困难去推动这个政策？所以我们找到了在20多年前最开始提出 Vision Zero 的这一位，当时是瑞典的基础建设部下面的交通管理局里面的安全部门的一个主管哦，其实他不是一个很高阶的官员，他其实是一个交通学者这样。那我们就问他说，当时他现在是瑞典理工Chalmers 理工大学的一个教授。那这个政策推动之后，他也后来受邀到到澳洲去教学，后来也在一些汽车的安全研究机构里面去做这个相关的研究，继续推动他的这个政策。那我们就问他说，当时他在推动这件事情的时候，有没有受到什么批评？就他说，当然最大的批评就是很多人说零死亡根本做不到。那他说，但是呢，他作为一个交通专业人员，他认为他的职责就跟医生一样，因为医生在受袍的时候都要念一段希波克拉底誓词啊，里面有一段话就是“病人的健康为我首要顾念”，而他作为一个交通官员，设计一个不会让人死亡的交通系统，也是他的首要顾念。那接下来我们就来听听这个 Dr. Tingvall 他的访谈，谢谢。
Yes, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and I hope I can shed some light on development of the Vision Zero. Well, it started almost 30 years ago, and I was involved from day one. And the background is simply that the old analysis that we need to change the behavior and habits of road user doesn't lead us to where we want to be, a road transport system without any health losses. And the analysis led us, of course, to that you need to change the chain of responsibility. Who is really responsible for prevention to move forward. It's not blaming. It's not asking about sort of who should we blame. It's rather, how do you find those stakeholders and the driving mechanisms for change? And that is what I've been involved with, well, since then, since 1995. Yeah, the origin really comes from that if you have other people's life and health in your hands, and that is what the Hippocrates Oath is about, that if you're a medical doctor or a person that treats another person and that person's life is in your hands, you are obliged to use the resources you have at hand to use, well, to do as good as you can to save that person's life. And that is really Vision Zero. The name Zero is that we as professionals, myself and all the others that are responsible for the prevention in the road transport system, we cannot make a trade-off between other people's life and other benefits. That's the very sort of basic idea behind Vision Zero and traffic safety. And that has, of course, implications. We must use the best possible method. We must sort of listen to what is evidence-based and continuously develop the methods and the tools that we are using to make sure that we save the life and health of people out there. So it's very simple. Well, the most important ones, if you are there to save other people's life, you need to take into account that they are not perfect, that they will make mistakes, misjudgments, and even violations of some of the rules and regulations we have out there. And you need to build that into your design and the operation of road transport system, because it's no use to let people do mistakes and afterwards blame them for what they did. In fact, you need to think in advance, what can go wrong and how can I mitigate that? And how can I work systematically to make sure I understand more of people's behavior? It doesn't mean that I shouldn't be clear about sort of what you expect from the humans out there. For example, you can't be drunk when you're driving a car, but if people do things like that, sooner or later you need to take that into account and solve it in one way or another. If you can't make people do what they need to do, you need to find another method. So that's the main paradigm shift. The other one is, of course, innovation. You need to find new ways of doing things that maybe they're cheaper, simpler, doesn't impact on accessibility, and a lot of other things as well. So you need to be all the time to sort of ask for those innovations and make sure that you don't experiment with them, but you try to find out if they can work. I mean, there's so many things that has happened since then, but in the beginning, and if you talk about, for example, urban development, city planning and things like that, sure, that's very much about, through infrastructure to impact on people's behavior, both the unprotected road users as well as those who are driving vehicles and things like that. But now more and more also to add vehicle technology, and if you talk about pedestrians and bicyclists, to make sure that vehicles have the possibility to detect, and if the driver is not braking or something, that the car can interact and so on. But in the end, it's a system, and you need to make that system work. And you can do it in a cheap way, which is pretty crude, and your mobility maybe will be impacted, or you can do it in a more advanced way. It will cost money, but then you can maybe a higher level of mobility out there for motor cars and things like that. But I think it's very important to claim that it's not money we're talking about. It's being clever, it's doing the right things, it is using science, proven experience to find the best way of doing things. It's not only fancy technology, it's quite basic things you can do from the beginning and then work yourself through towards using more of the sort of possibilities that are out there. Well, it was very exciting. It is still exciting. It was very exciting in the beginning to discuss and find what should we do first to demonstrate that this is a policy that makes sense. So the first one was really, I mean, we built a piece of road in a city demonstrating what you can do with elevated pedestrian crossings and low speed and well, a lot of things like that. But it was really what is called the 2+1 roads, where you put up a median barrier on roads that are not that wide, that it's not a big motorway with 4 or 6 or 8 lanes, but we had a lot of roads in Sweden that were only 13 meters wide. So you can squeeze in 3 lanes, and so you always have at least one in one direction, and then you can 2 in the other direction, and then shift. And we put up a medium barrier there, a physical medium barrier there. And that sort of demonstrated that we, by very little money, being quite clever, don't impact on accessibility and mobility, but we improved safety, reduced the number of deaths by maybe 80 to 90% on those pieces of road where we brought that in. So we thought that was a good demonstrator of that, taking into account that people make mistakes and we have been sort of thinking in advance what to do, was a good way to demonstrate. Not everyone liked it in the beginning, I must say. Very few liked it. But after a few months, we got a very high acceptance simply because it worked and people were happy with it. It is the idea that you don't have to overtake 100% of the time. So you can overtake sometimes because you have 2 lanes in one direction and 1 in the opposite direction, and then you shift. So you got 1 lane in your direction and 2 lanes in the opposite. So you're shifting every maybe 5th kilometer or something, 3 kilometer, you're shifting, so you drive. And that gives good possibilities for overtaking at the same time as the safety, because you have a physical barrier there in the middle all the time. You can't have an oncoming crash, and you also avoid a lot of single vehicle crashes to the sort of to the opposite side of the road. So for motor vehicles, I mean for passenger cars and trucks and lorries, this was a very good solution. And you can't have an oncoming fatal crash, which was at that time the most common crash type that killed so many people, but we could actually eliminate them. But the key thing was it costed more or less no money. It increased the cost of infrastructure with maybe 1% or something like that. So for no money, you save a lot of lives. And that was a little bit important to show that we're not asking for all the money of the community. Sure, it works, but not 100%. But for motor vehicles, I mean, you reduce the risk of a fatality by 90-95%. So to build a normal intersection, I would say, goes against very much the ideas of saving people's life. And a roundabout, by the way, does not impact on traffic flow if you can control it in other ways, of course. But of course, what the idea with a roundabout is that it can absorb people's mistakes. You crash often in a roundabout, but you don't get up to the mechanical force needed to injure or kill a human sitting in a car or any kind of motor vehicle. So that's why it makes such sense. Early in the process, we had the policy of 30 kilometers per hour in urban areas where you mix pedestrians and bicyclists and motor cars. Unfortunately, that has sort of been taking a very long time, and we're not there yet. Although there's some so strong suggestions from WHO and others that everywhere where you have that mix, you should have maximum of 30 kilometers per hour. But I think it's just now that we are understanding that it has got nothing to do with congestion. You don't increase congestion with lower speed. In fact, it's the other way around. But it has got so many other good benefits for accessibility, for the use of walking and cycling and so on, for noise, for pollution, for livability more generally. So it's coming along now, but it's taken so many years. And you're right, it's taken us a longer time to make sure that we have the methods for saving pedestrians and bicyclists. And by the way, they are the majority in the rest of the world. If you take low and middle income countries, it is really pedestrians and vulnerable road users, that we call them, that are the main victims of a poor road transport system. But I think now with the 2030 agenda about sustainability, where traffic safety is not the only quality, but there are other qualities, the concentration on urban areas and cities will grow quite rapidly, because we want another city. We want a city that is much more livable, a place to be, and where we understand that, for example, children must be able to walk or bicycle to school from quite early ages. And they can't do that, of course, in an environment that is so dangerous to them. So it's because as we all know, traffic is something everyone is involved in, and of course has got a lot of ideas about and a lot of experience and how it works. And of course we should listen to that, but we should also listen to what science says and what the experience we have in a more systematic ways tells us. And that conflict about mobility and safety, I mean, it really doesn't exist. But sure, if there are situations you need to choose safety, mobility is a function of safety and not the vice versa. It's the same like in aviation or railway or something like that. Safety is the given. Mobility is what you get out of it if you have very good safety level. It's the same here. So you need to go that direction. But of course, when you are negotiating with the public, don't listen to common sense. Common sense is our biggest enemy. You need to be very clear about what science says, what your sources are, no guessing, but really the facts out there. I mean, that's the only way, facts, and that we can demonstrate, and maybe we can make a pilot to show people and convince them that this is the right way to go. And you need allies, of course. You need allies from the climate sector, from health, from equity, and from business out there. In particular, business should give a lot of support for a sustainable community, because that's what they live on. There's no business on a planet that is not sustainable, as you know. So it's very important that everyone, and especially professionals, get involved and understands the argument. They are the ones you need to understand and make sure you are understood by them, because traffic safety should go hand in hand with other aspirations of a sustainable community. And especially, as I said, for cities, I think this is very important, that the cities become not only safer, but also in terms of things related to environmental issues and to livability and things like that are important. So finding your allies, and like talking about 30 kilometers per hour in built-up areas, you need those allies, of course. The second one is follow science. Make sure you understand why and all the arguments for and against, because facts is the only thing you can use to convince. Sure, we are in a business where people where people suffer so much. I mean, this is a public health catastrophe we are looking at, and it's been going on for 100 years now. But I don't think emotion is enough. You need both, of course, values and emotions, but you need, of course, the hard facts as well. This is the way you treat it. That's what we did with the corona. I mean, the pandemic. This is what we do with other things, and with health in particular, we do that, and of course other things as well. So science is what you need as well. And the third thing is simply, well, follow the money. Look who is sort of have interest, not to give you money, of course, but to use their resources. And especially if you talk about large corporations with their supply chains, with the deliveries, and with all the services, they are a natural ally because, of course, their safety footprint, the people that are killed and seriously injured as a result of their supply chain, because they are hitting pedestrians when they are transporting things and so on, they are so very important. And there are other, of course, investments and things like that, where you need to make sure that you can demonstrate that investments are well, I mean, that it makes sense to do that. And talk to the automotive industry. In the end, they need to demonstrate to their owners that they are not going to continue to throw their products to make it easy to kill other people, because that's not the intention, of course. And don't be afraid, but you need to talk very clearly with them about what you expect. And there are other things related to when I say follow the money. Once again, it's not because you want their money, you want their resources, you want them to mind their own businesses to make sure they are not harming the community. And I mean, today that would be the best advice is that I personally can give. We still have a lot to do in our country, and cities need to do so much more. But I think we're on the way, and I think many countries are, very many. But it is. I mean, my final word is simply that, especially an urban designer and those who are involved in designing the mobility in the cities, what they do is really engineer the social interaction between different road users. And you can engineer that. You don't need to talk to them. There are so many good ways in making sure that you improve the social interaction, because we all humans have it. It's just a matter to make sure it can operate out there. That's the way we can operate. But to make sure that social interaction happens in a way that it is not dangerous. But you don't hit a person you look at, and given the enough time to brake, you don't do that. And the question is, how can an engineer in the city and with other knowledge make sure that you create those interactions, and together with vehicle technology, that sometimes it can go wrong, but then the speed is enough low to make sure the vehicle can do what it should do in that situation. That's how the system works, and there are no secrets there, but a lot of knowledge, of course.